for those that deserve it. There's going to be a lot more oversight with the new budget to make sure that these freeloaders, then there's plenty of them, that take advantage of the system. Eating too many hot dogs and hanging out on our tax dollars and contributing nothing to society. Just living off our taxes. And folks, this is not just a few hundred people. That would be nice. Not a few thousand people. From estimates, it's in the millions. I'm not even kidding. In the millions of people freeloading off the system. And if they can get away with it, can you blame them? Because nobody's checking up on them. Nobody's looking after them. And they're put into the cycle. A lot of the inner city folks, a generation after generation of welfare. And no wonder there's so much crime and despair in a lot of our inner cities. It's a real problem. And it needs to be addressed. So when your liberal friends say that Donald Trump wants to starve the poor and the elderly and all of this nonsense has nothing to do with it, there's plenty of money to go around in this spending budget here, if passed, to feed these people and keep entitlements going. It's just there's going to be much more oversight. And like I've said time and again, if you're a good CEO, CFO, you're going to find out where the money's going. And that's a lot of money. And that's just been basically burning out from freeloaders that don't have anything better to do than just sit at home and watch the TV. And it's sad. To me, it's a sad existence. It's a waste of life, in my opinion. But there are people that do it. And again, they could go out and mow some lawns. They could do something. You know, we talked about Chuck before the break. And Chuck's done a little of everything in his life before he was a radio talk show host. And he had some down times. And he told a story on the air before that he would follow the trash truck. Well, he wouldn't follow him, actually, but he would follow the route of the trash truck, but he would go ahead of the trash truck to be able to find the goodies, as he put them, so he could sell them at a flea market. And that's how he was able to pay his rent when times were tough. That's what a man does. He does what he has to do, what he needs to do. And when he doesn't need to be on welfare because he's hustling, he's making a buck, he can cut that and doesn't have to lie. Something about being able to take care of your own on your own dime, your own sweat and tears. It's called being a man. My father, I'll tell you, the tough love thing, he could have paid for anything for me, and he just chose not to do it. Now, he'd give me money here and there, you know, for food and this and that when he could. Well, I think he always could. But he would just do it because he wanted to do it. So here's an extra $20 or an extra $100 or whatever it was. But when it came to, you know, things that I wanted, or I wanted to pursue, I had savings. I saved, I worked, and then I achieved. And I'll tell you something, I'm so glad that he did it, because when you earn it, you have a sense of pride. It's nothing like seeing somebody that has been out of work and you give somebody a job. Their demeanor changes. They dress better. They look better. They sound better. And they even appear to be healthier because they're not so stressed out. Getting off the dole. What did Newt Gingrich say several years ago when he was running for president? He says what people need is a hand up, not a handout. That's my takeaway for this big, ambitious budget. And it is big. It's huge. It's unbelievable. But entitlements in this country, people are entitled. They feel that they're entitled for it. And I'll have to say, for many people that have aged in this country or up in retirement and, they lost their jobs and that's all they can depend on, the Medicaid. And I'm not down on you or down on people. I'm talking about people that can work, that are healthy enough, can do it, can get out there, can do something. I'm not talking about, well, you could have. Now, plenty of young people, young adults that are healthy as a cow and they're okay. They can do things. But the economy is going to be taken off, I think, with these new companies coming in, investing in America. I think that there are going to be plenty more jobs where people can have a nice future and feel like they are actually attaining the American dream. But remember, it's the pursuit of happiness, and our founding fathers knew this. This is something that you have to pursue. I don't want to sound, I guess, I don't want to be this motivational coach, but, I need to occasionally remind myself of some of these things, too, as times get tough. Because a lot of times you're not going to get somebody that's going to pat you on the shoulder and say, good job. You're not going to get that. And nor should you look for it. You need to pursue things that are honest endeavors and things that are fulfilling and things that resonate with you, things that make sense. And a lot of people have lost their ambition. They've lost their drive. They don't have it anymore. When they were younger, they say, well, ambition's for the youth. I disagree. I think adults can have it. It's finding another vision. It's getting out there, not sitting around and just being in your four walls. Getting out and helping be a solution to somebody else's problems. And in the process of that, you actually start helping yourself. It's what psychologists say. It's very therapeutic. But sitting down and doesn't do anything. Watching the world go round and round. Smelling the roses occasionally? Absolutely. I'm all for taking it easy when you can. But as one wise man said, there's going to be a time when you're 6 feet under. We're going to have plenty of time to actually sleep. So if you have a pulse, like Paul Newman said, you have a purpose. So some of you may have needed to hear that today, so I just needed to pass that along. But, sometimes you just have to say things like this because it's truth. And sometimes the truth hurts for people that don't want to hear it. But I tell you, Bill Clinton's government, when Bill Clinton was president in the 90s, there was an economic recovery, and it was the longest U.S. economic recovery in history. Produced 4 years of black ink from 1998 to 2001. I'm looking back and I'm saying, wow. And I don't think that it was totally his doings. I think that Reagan certainly set it up for it, but he can take credit for that. During the campaign, Trump attacked the weak economic growth of the Obama years and pledged that his economic program, if you remember, would boost growth from the lackluster 2% rate seen. The recovery began, mid-2009. Trump's new budget is based on a sustained growth above 3%, sharply higher than the expectations of most private economists. So the president believes that we must restore the greatness of our nation and reject the failed status quo that has left the American dream out of reach for too many families. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Weigh in on Facebook today. Tell me what you think. What are your thoughts? Weigh in on Facebook. By the way, some of our stations take us on delay, but we're going to start taking phone calls during our live broadcast. And we'll be announcing that very shortly, but we're going to start enacting that so we can take your questions, your comments, and that'll be fun to do. So according to these budget tables, I go on, released by the administration, Trump's plan cuts $3.6 trillion from an array of benefit programs, domestic agencies, and war spending over the coming decade, and almost 8% cut, including repealing and replacing Obama health care, cutting Medicaid, eliminating student loans, sharply slashing food stamps and cutting $95 billion in highway formula funding for the states. Cuts to a popular crop insurance program have already landed with a thud. There's going to be some undesirables, and it's going to sound terrible. But the administration has said that in this $4.1 trillion, it'll be okay. And states will be okay. And remember, ladies and gentlemen, there's plenty of ministries out there in churches. And there was a time where people just, when they were down on their luck and they needed help, they actually reached out to churches for help. And you know what's a real crime? Is a lot of these freeloaders, as they put them, they're already getting the food stamps, if you will, on a credit card, an EBT card. And then what do? They go over to the soup kitchens or the church with their pantries, and they grab even more food. And their pantries are much more impressive than yours. And that's terrible. But it's done every single day. And if you really need help, I believe you'll be able to get it. If you're hungry, thank God, in America, you can eat. There's always a soup kitchen. The Salvation Army is always eager to feed you. The Red Cross is always there. And if you really need help to get out of town, out of Dodge or somewhere else because you're down on your luck and you need to travel, you can get a bus ticket. One of the buses still runs, or they'll give you a train ticket. They believe that your story is sound and you're not full of holes. By the way, the former CIA director, John Brenner, he is in Washington today. They're questioning him about Russia. And he was asked, because of the the explosion and the carnage, the death and all that, about what he had thought about the safety and security of America, which is a great question. It brings fears up because people think, could this possibly happen here? They allowed him the opportunity to be able to reassure the American people, and this is what he had to say about everything. And no, that's not John Brennan. Here's John Brenner here, right here.
Well, I would say that ISIS and Al-Qaeda and their terrorist affiliates continue to try to carry out these outrageous attacks in Europe as well as in the United States. But I can say with great confidence that this country has the absolute best counterterrorism community that knits together the experts from intelligence, law enforcement, homeland security, and does a great job of making sure that our federal structure is interoperating as best it can with state and local officials and local law enforcement. And so I have seen a tremendous growth of capability as well as in enhanced national architecture since 9/11 in terms of the ability to share counterterrorism information quickly, terrorist threat information, so that when it's collected overseas or wherever, it gets to those individuals who have to take action on it. So I can assure the American people that I know today my former colleagues are working even harder than they ever have before to prevent attacks.
Former CIA Director John Brenner, and he, of course, being questioned about intelligence and this whole Russian collusion deal. And it got a little hot today, so here's a little sound of that on Capitol Hill today.
As I mentioned in my opening statement, I was convinced in the summer that the Russians were trying to interfere in the election. And they were very aggressive. It was a multifaceted effort. And I wanted to make sure that we were able to expose as much of that as possible.
But was there intelligence that said that the Trump campaign was colluding with Moscow during their campaign?
There was intelligence that the Russian intelligence services were actively involved in this effort and have having been involved in many counterintelligence cases in the past, I know what the Russians try to do. They try to suborn individuals, and they try to get individuals, including U.S. persons, to act on their behalf either wittingly or unwittingly. And I was worried by a number of the contacts that the Russians had with U.S. persons, and so therefore, by the time I left office on